Hey, Allison Verhalen here with AV Writing Services, and today I want to talk to you about guest blogging. Guest blogging is a super helpful way, not only to improve your SEO, but also to improve your authority, because it's one thing to write all these blog posts on your own website, right? And we do talk constantly about how blogging is a great way to improve your authority, and it is, but blogging on your own blog is not enough. Blogging on someone else's website is much more, it's a much better way of communicating the fact that you really are an expert and you're trusted. You have that authority. There are people in your industry or in related industries who recognize that you have that authority. So it's not the magic bullet for your SEO that it once was, but it is still a great way to drive organic traffic to your website. So that being said, there's a right way and a wrong way to do guest blogging, right? If you're just submitting a whole bunch of guest blogs and not really thinking about the website that you're submitting them to or how you're submitting them, you could end up wasting a lot of time and energy that you don't have time to waste, because as small business owners, we have too much going on in our lives to waste on doing anything. And it takes so much time and effort just to create content for our own websites that creating more content for another website can really seem overwhelming. So in order to get over the overwhelm and avoid that, we are going to think more strategically about how to get that visibility through guest blogging. So the first thing you need to do before you submit any guest blogs is start commenting. Identify the influencers in your industry, the people you really admire, and also in related industries, and start commenting on their content on their blogs. If they don't allow comments on their blogs, follow them on social media. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But for right now, comment on their websites when you can. And it needs to be much more than just, hey, thanks for the tips, this was great. It needs to be more thoughtful. It has to really relate to what it is they're saying in the article, so that if you agree with something they're saying, state why you agree. If you disagree, again, say why you disagree. Be respectful. You never want to be mean, because that's not going to get you anywhere. But you do want to say why you disagree with them, because stating that position and explaining why you have that position is really, again, that's going to get you the authority and the buy-in, much more than just, hey, thanks for this post, it's great content, love it. Next up is build relationships. So, there's an old saying that in business that it's not what you know, it's whom you know. And you might think that's dead with the internet, but it's really not. It's just morphed. It's in some ways more alive than ever. It's just that whom we know has been expanded beyond our geographical circle, right? There are people now, especially with this pandemic, there are people we've met online that we are happy that we know very well, and we are happy to recommend them to our friends and family because we trust that they know what they're doing, even if we've never met them in person. So build those relationships online, have those Zoom meetings, and follow them on social media. Look at the editors of the blog posts that you love of those websites. If they have a ton of content, they probably have editors who are, that's all they do, is editing this content, publishing this content, writing content for the website, and managing those guest blogs. So you want to really get to know those people. So follow them on social media. And again, engage with their posts, comment on their posts, share their posts. Try to get in conversation with them online. You don't have to be in person. This was true long before the pandemic, but the pandemic has made it more true than ever that you don't need to be in person. That being said, things are finally starting to open up again, and we are starting to be in person more and more, which is great. So take that into account. And if you are going to an in-person event and someone is following you, someone that you know is that you're following online, if you know they're going to be at an event that you're going to be at, send them a quick message and say, hey, we're going to be at this event together. Would you like to grab a cup of coffee or lunch or something? There's really nothing beats that in-person connection. Next up, and I probably should have led with this, is choose wisely. So when you're going to be guest blogging and building these relationships, And guest blogging it's a win-win for everyone, right? They get free content for their website and they get more traffic. And hopefully you should be helping to drive that traffic to their website because you're going to be talking it up on your social media and talking about it in your newsletter. So it gets them more exposure as well as you. So it's a win for everyone. So that being said, you don't want to drive traffic to a competitor, and they're not necessarily going to want to give you exposure if you're competing with them. So don't try to write guest blogs for websites that are providing the same things you're providing. Instead, write guest blogs for people who maybe they're providing similar services or products, or they're in a related industry. For example, I could try targeting people who are web designers or marketing professionals, because those marketing consultants need people who write blogs because they're constantly telling their clients that they need to be blogging. So that's actually a thing that I did do. I didn't do a guest blog, but I had a presentation I gave to a marketing group all about blogging, because the person leading the group, it provided value to her and to her members of her group, but it's not something that she's super knowledgeable in. So she was able to bring me in and again, provide that value, and I got the extra exposure. So it was a win for both of us. Same for guest blogging, it's just a little bit different format. That being said, next up, you want to know how to ask to write a guest blog post. So every website that accepts guest blog posts is going to have that little form that you fill out on their website where you go through the submission guidelines and you submit something and you click a button and you never hear from them again. This is akin to what they in the publishing industry call the slush pile, right? That's the pile of manuscripts that get submitted to a publishing company without any kind of representation, without any kind of agent. And most of the time they never get read. They just sit in this pile or they get destroyed and no one pays any attention to them. It's the same thing if you submit through their online portal, because so many of them get so many blog posts and so many requests for guest blogging that they just don't have the time to go through all of them. So instead, what you need to do is, again, you've built those relationships with those editors. This is why, this is where it comes in handy. You are going to reach out to them personally, whether it's an email or message them on social media and say, hey, I've got this great blog post idea. Don't just ask for a guest blog post without saying what it's going to be about. You need to know what it's going to be about. You need to know their audience, what they've already written about. You're going to give them reasons why they want this particular blog post from you, right? So that's how you go about asking to write that guest blog post. And hopefully that blog post should already be written. And when you write it, make sure that you write it for them and their website and not for you and your website. It's always going to be a little bit different. So for example, even though you're not submitting through their website portal, you still want to pay attention to their submission guidelines, because they're still going to lay out what it is they accept in guest blog posts and what they don't accept. You also want to keep in mind their target audience, their tone of voice that they tend to use, what topics they've already covered, because you don't want to repeat anything. You want to make sure that it's the same length roughly that most of their blog posts tend to fall into. Remember that this is for them and their audience, not for you and your audience. Next up, so they've accepted your blog post, they've published it on their website, it's awesome, they love it, everyone loves it. You have to distribute it. That's kind of part of the unspoken deal. Sometimes it is in ink. They're going to put it in the contract of you have to distribute it, as far as putting it out on your social media, announcing it in your newsletter, letting people know, hey, I just have this blog post, this guest blog, I wrote it over here, go check it out. So you're driving traffic to their website. They're going to do the same thing for you, right? They're going to put it out on their social media, announce it to their followers. That's going to drive traffic to your website, because again, people are going to look at you and recognize your name when that little bio pops up either at the bottom or the top of the blog post. So again, it's a win-win, but you have to fulfill your end of the bargain. So make sure you distribute your guest blog post. And finally, asking for guest blog posts for your own website, right? So like I said at the beginning, it's hard enough for most of us to create content for our own websites, much less to, in addition to that, create content for someone else's website. So instead of driving yourself crazy trying to create all this content, you can accept guest blog posts on your own website, and again, strategically reach out to people and ask if they would like to submit a guest blog post for your website. Again, not a direct competitor, but someone else in the industry or in a related industry, someone who could be a good referral partner for you. Be really strategic about the kinds of people from whom you accept those guest blog posts. And you also want to make sure that they're people who have about the same amount of traffic to their website as you have. If you don't have much of a following, if you're just getting started and they have a ton of followers, it's not going to be super beneficial to them to write a guest blog post for your website because they're not getting much more exposure than they already have. Whereas it's really beneficial for you because again, you're getting this free content, you've got this buy-in from this expert. So really make sure that you're strategic about it and make sure that it's someone who's on a similar playing field to you, because that way there is a benefit to them and a benefit to you to swap guest blog posts, which is the other thing. Sometimes in exchange for a guest blog post, you can offer to write a guest blog post for their website. And again, it's a win-win. You don't have to create a ton of content for your website and a ton of content for someone else's website. You can do a little bit of a trade. And again, you both win. You both get that extra exposure. So as far as SEO, you do usually get a link back to your website from your guest blog post. That used to be a great way, and I've talked before about backlinks. So that used to be a great way to get backlinks to your website. You just do a ton of guest blog posts and they're at these very highly regarded websites. And they have these links linking back to your website. And it's a great way to build your SEO because I've talked about that before, about how having all these backlinks is a great way to improve your visibility because it gets buy-in from other websites and other authorities in your industry that you know what you're talking about and you are an expert in this. Google loves that, but Google kind of caught on to this guest blogging strategy, and it's not really a fan anymore of all those links linking back to your website from guest blog posts. So it doesn't really count anymore. You know, Google is pretty good at finding out what those links are, and it's not going to count them towards your SEO anymore. It's not going to hurt your SEO, and you are still driving organic traffic to your website. So it is absolutely still worth doing, especially just as far as it comes to building that visibility and establishing yourself as an authority in your industry. But as far as SEO, yes, it's beneficial. It's just not the silver bullet that it once was. So that is it. Those are all my tips for guest blogging, why you should be doing it and how to go about doing it. So again, if you want any other information on blogging or SEO or anything else related to content marketing, you can find that over at my website at avwritingservices.com. You can always ask me questions directly. I am at info@avwritingservices.com. That's it. Thanks so much. Have a great week and happy blogging.